Diablo, who was standing there before anyone noticed, assessed their fighting style. He was looking down from such a height that it was more refreshing than appalling. Weren't you dealing with another opponent? Kugali asked fearfully. Leon and the others pricked up their ears, but Diablo answered without a care. If I step in, it would end in an instant. I cannot rob them of their opportunity to shine, can I? It was ridiculous confidence, but to those who knew Diablo, it felt exactly like him. Diablo continued. I would like to observe Rimuru-sama's exploits, but I cannot do that either. It is an order from Rimuru-sama, so I am here reluctantly, Diablo announced as if enduring great pain. As if to prove his words, Cornu, whom Diablo had headed toward first, was fighting an even battle with Rudra. Although Cornu had been destroyed by Valgrand in a surprise attack, he was a top-class warrior and a close friend confidant of the Phantom King Feldway. Furthermore, he was now fused with the power of the wings. He was not an opponent who could be defeated easily. He was not a half-hearted opponent, yet to Diablo, it seemed different. To begin with, the person facing Cornu head-on was strong. Since it was Rudra, who had been equal to Gi, this was natural. If Rudra were in his own original body rather than dwelling in the body of an ordinary boy named Masayuki, he would likely have been able to defeat Cornu all by himself. However, unfortunately, the current Rudra did not have that much power, and it was difficult to finish off Cornu alone. But, from Diablo's perspective, there was no problem. Why? Because there were other strong individuals there besides Rudra. Specifically speaking, Feldway, whom Diablo had dragged onto the battlefield, was there. There were also Cornu's old friends, Zalario and Abair. Persuasion through words had already begun, and judging by Cornu's bewildered appearance, it seemed there was no curtain call for Diablo. Taking in the situation, Leon, Yuki, and the others accepted Diablo's words. Indeed, since he was told by Rimuru I'm counting on you, he could not abandon the front lines. Not only that, he seemed poised to watch over the whole situation to ensure that one side didn't lose, while he assisted only one area. I can't decide if he has a sense of responsibility or not. Olmesia, listening from the side, was also perplexed. Regardless, according to Diablo's assessment, this place was safe for the time being. With Ultima and Carrera, they won't lose so easily. However, please do not let your guard down. On the battlefield, you never know what might happen. Leaving those words behind, Diablo left the scene. When Diablo arrived, Testarossa and Hinata were struggling against Vega. Testarossa was, in a word, impressive. She had already made the slime cells her own. Therefore, showing no signs of struggle against Vega, she had switched to supporting Hinata. She was currently executing a careful containment operation to ensure he absolutely would not escape this time. I see, as expected of Testarossa. Oh, to be praised by you makes me happy. It was an exchange devoid of emotion, but he was genuinely praising her, and she was happy. On the other hand, regarding Vega. In truth, he was confused. Dull. Why am I fighting? Why target me? Vega had already lost the will to fight. Although he sought strength, such things were powerless before loneliness. Therefore, in his own way, Vega reflected. He had infinite time to re-examine his foolish self. And Vega had arrived at a single truth. What is important is a heart that cares for others, or so he thought. As if to prove that, his former comrades were safe. He could see Yuki in the distance, and he could confirm Mai's figure. They were safe. In the end, I was the one who was wrong. I thought the boss was a fool for dying to protect his comrades, but now, I feel envious of it. It was an envy toward Yuki he had never felt before. He wanted to chew on that feeling, but there were those interfering with Vega. Well, I've got history with these women too. There were those who had fought Vega in the past. Moreover, the troublesome thing was that one of the women Testarossa had become ridiculously dangerous, even from Vega's perspective. In addition to these two, Xian and Kumar, who seemed full of motivation, were participating in the attacks. This was inflicting pain on Vega that he could not ignore. This is bad, Vega's instinct screamed. Out of that desperation, Vega acted reflexively without thinking. Tisk, save me. Vega shouted this and used the corpses of the cryptids rolling on the ground as bait to perform evil dragon beast production. The current Vega could create 12 evil dragon beasts at once, provided he had bait. And there was plenty of bait. Moreover, their existence values easily exceeded 10 million. Because the current Vega possessed a ridiculous amount of magicule energy, it was reflected in the created evil dragon beasts. The weakness of lacking skill levels remained, but in terms of raw power alone, they were monsters hiding tremendous combat ability. Those evil dragon beasts were unleashed all at once. The 12 simultaneously appearing evil dragon beasts obeyed Vega's confused will and began to rampage. Vega's intention was to escape, while the evil dragon beasts were rampaging. He didn't understand the current situation at all, and he didn't think he had a reason to fight. Most of the evil deeds he committed in the past were beyond the forgetful horizon. If anything, he intended to have already finished his atonement. But that was only Vega's side of the story. To Hinata and Tensura, Vega was an enemy to be hated. Vega's limitation was his failure to realize that. When Vega unleashed the evil dragon beasts, Valgrind asked Rudra, who was facing Cornu. Troublesome ones have started rampaging, shouldn't you summon the heroes again? With Rudra, Masayuki's Einerjar, they could handle several evil dragon beasts. Depending on the parallel existences Valgrind could prepare, they should be able to tilt the war situation in their favor. That was the logic behind Valgrind's statement, but Rudra rejected it. Impossible. Once summoned, the heroes use up their power. Besides, Einerjar is originally a technique that just unleashes each of their ultimate moves simultaneously, so as not to burden the heroes. Manifesting them for a long time is hard for me to maintain, too. In this case, me referred to Masayuki, not Rudra. It was difficult enough during the previous soul pain, and even then, he had been lucky. Rudra explained that if done poorly, it would shorten his lifespan. Hearing this, Valgrind easily reversed her opinion. In that case, let's have the others do their best. Valgrind was unwavering in prioritizing Masayuki. And so, the battlefield fell into further chaos. Dealing with the evil dragon beasts that Vega had unleashed in a panic became the role of Gopta and his group. Of course, not just Gopta. Gopta and Ranga, Kabiru, and Geld. It was impossible for these 3+1 animal to handle 12 evil dragon beasts. So, Sion and Kumar left Vega and headed toward the evil dragon beasts. Not only that, but Carrion, Midray, and Free, who had been watching Cornu and Rudra's battle, came as reinforcements. Having heard the conversation between Valgrind and Rudra, they judged that they should move. This made 8 people plus 1 animal. Then, realizing the situation, Leon, Omija, and Sylvia joined the fray. They were still 1 person short, but saying I will handle it, Sai appeared from the shadows. Because of this, Hinata, who had started to move, turned back to face Vega. Vega's plan had failed. In the end, Tensura and Hinata stood in his way, and no opening to escape was born. However, right here, the situation changed drastically. The world stopped. With time stopped, the entire battlefield froze. And the conclusion of the battle was entrusted to the hands of those who ruled even time. Jahal, Cornu, and Vega met that moment. The 3 simultaneously understood that time had stopped. It was their first experience, but they could respond normally. This was thanks to the adaptive ability of Iverage's children. By obtaining those bodies, the ones inhabiting them had also adapted to the suspended world. Due to this, there was 1 person who escaped a crisis. It was Vega. Vega and the 12 evil dragon beasts had been fighting evenly with the gathered strong warriors. Although their fighting style relied on physical ability and skill performance, they possessed the troublesome characteristic of recovering immediately if there were corpses, so they did not retreat a single step against opponents who were superior in skill. Half of the 12 people plus 1 animal were pushing back the evil dragon beasts without struggle, thinking nothing of the difference in existence value. However, the remaining half were forced into a battle lacking a decisive blow, leading to a trend of gradual exhaustion. That situation changed completely when time stopped. The only ones around Vega who could move within the suspended world were Tensura, Xion, and Diablo. Sao had learned the counter method from Diablo, but he had not yet mastered it. Though he had consciousness, he could not move his body. All the others had their activities sealed and were left behind on the battlefield. It was a fatal situation, however. The reason this didn't settle the match was that the enemy evil dragon beasts were also unable to act in the suspended world. They could probably move if Vega possessed them, but Vega was not clever enough for his wisdom to reach that far. Since Vega himself was struggling to understand what was happening right now, there was no way his judgment could reach that extent. To begin with, Vega thought that this was not the time to be fighting. Therefore, this situation was a godsend. Fortunately or unfortunately, the one directly crossing blades with Vega was Hinata, and Tensura was slightly further away deploying Nihility. She was poised to block Vega's escape route and finish him off in one go. Vega instinctively sensed the danger too, but he had his hands full weathering Hinata's fierce attacks. Vega jumped without hesitation at the once-in-a-lifetime chance that arrived there. The Nihility filling the surroundings bared its fangs as if to devour Vega's body. However, the density was not enough to completely erase Vega. It hurts, but I can handle this much. It actually was a big deal. After all, the current Tensura had become more vicious than when she was facing Velzard. As a result of making the slime cells her own, she could manipulate Nihility with speed and precision incomparable to before. The white purifying world constructed by Tensura attacked Vega, thinking nothing of the suspended world. Because he broke through it without caring, Vega was covered in wounds. Even so, thinking I'm alive so it's no problem, Vega was the one who could be declared abnormal in this case. Tis, he escaped again. If we speak only of this instance, it does not seem to be your fault. Oh, for Diablo to comfort me, rare things do happen. I merely stated the fact. That man survived fighting even me and Sir Benimer. Considering that, it is likely difficult to finish him off. Besides, Diablo continued. I sensed something slightly strange. Strange, you say? Yes. When I confronted him in the labyrinth, he was filled with more thirst for power. From him just now, I could not feel that aura at all. A voracious desire for victory. The current Vega lacked that. Diablo had seen through that and found it suspicious. Saying it's not fun to defeat an opponent who has no will to win, as usual, your perspective is skewed. Tensura concluded, sounding exasperated. Sion nodded to this. I agree with the opinion that Diablo is weird. Besides, there is no need to think too hard. If it's an enemy, defeat it. Whether it is an enemy or not is something to think about after defeating it. She boldly stated an opinion that was wrong in many ways. And just like that, leaving behind the words, they say get used to it rather than worry about it, so I shall get going. She went chasing after Vega. The remaining Diablo and Tensura looked at each other, exasperated. There were many points of concern, but I must admit there is a grain of truth in Lady Xian's argument. Nodding deeply to each other, the two immediately followed after Xian.